This is not just who's the best. This is just backfields in total. So we're not just going who's the number one running back on each team and ranking them. We're saying, okay, what are the best just total backfields in their entirety? So Vish, I think we are going to have different ones. We're going to have different answers on this. But the fourth one, who do you have as the fourth best backfield in the NFC West?
The fourth best backfield of the NFC West is the easiest answer. It's the easiest answer. It's the Arizona Cardinals. Chase Edmonds, not a bad player, actually, in my opinion. Pretty decent one. Not a running back one in the NFL. James Conner, again, very okay running back. Not a great one, not a bad one. But him and James Conner is your backfield, especially when you have a backfield led by Chris Carson, a backfield led by Cam Akers, who was really exciting as a rookie, and a backfield led by Raheem Mostert and Trey Sermon, who's exciting. And Raheem Mostert, when he plays, is a good back in the NFL and all of that. It's by far the fourth one. I don't know what else to say. It's really just one of the things that concerns me about Arizona because Cliff Kingsbury's not overly creative with their run scheme. I thought his run game was actually pretty good, especially with what he did with Kenyon Drake at the end of 2019. And 2020 was a disaster running the football for them. They are overly reliant on Kyler Murray's explosiveness and ability to run the football. And I don't expect a lot of that to change, even though Chase Edmonds has been their most effective back the last 2 years. I don't think he's this top upper echelon player that's going to just overcome the scheme and all of that.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I had the Cardinals at 4, and it's more just due to it could be like if these guys were on another team, they'd be solid, but just having only 2 guys who are probably not like the best quality running back number ones in the league. Now Connor he's shown really good flashes on the Steelers, but he's had a lot of injuries, and then Edmonds was the backup last year. And I think you mentioned it. The Cardinals' run game is just only really that good because Kyler Murray makes it good and scrambles out the pocket. They do a lot of read option, and Kyler keeps it and makes something out of nothing. So, yeah, not too much to say on the Cardinals. But I think it will get interesting here in who you have at number 3 because I think ours will be different. But who do you have as the third best backfield in the NFC West?
So we talked about this a little bit. I went back and forth on this one. I think this is the hardest spot to kind of rank. Yeah. And I'm going to go with the Seahawks at 3. And this very well could be the Niners, honestly, because like the Niners backs, it's more about what they can be than what they have been. Like Raheem Mostert in the short time he's played has contributed. Jeff Wilson in the short time he's played has contributed. I think we all like Trey Sermon, but the problem is that none of them have showed over a long period of time that they are Chris Carson, who's legitimately maybe a top 11, top 12 running back in the NFL. Like he's a very good player. Mm-hmm. And even though I don't like paying running backs, he did earn the money he got. He's been a good player in the NFL. But I have the Seahawks 3, and it's mostly because I don't know if Rashad Penny is going to be the perfect number 2 back for them coming off of his ACL injury and all of that. He struggled a little bit last year. Obviously, I actually don't think Travis Homer is that bad as a number 3 back. I think he's okay. DJ Dallas had a couple of pretty nice games for them last year, but I don't think that's anything to write home about. I think I like the Niners' overall depth better with Wilson, and I like Gallman, and obviously a lot of people like Elijah Mitchell, and I still haven't watched him, so I don't want to comment too much further on him. And, you know, I like Trey Sermon a lot and all of that. I think the overall depth is better with the Niners. So even though Carson's the best back, in my opinion, of the 2 teams, I'm going to go with Seattle at 3 because I don't trust their depth as much as I trust the Niners' depth.
Yeah, that's honestly fair. And I have the Niners at 3, and I think you brought up fair criticisms of the Seahawks. But end of day, mine was more of, okay, we're expecting like the number 1 and 2 guys to be healthy, but if they're not, then that's an issue. Because with the Niners, obviously, like Mostert is a really good running back when he's healthy, but he's constantly injured, and he hasn't been able to maintain his status as being just that electric guy when he's unhealthy with leg injuries, of course. And then the number 2 or 3 backs, or number 2, 3, and 4 backs, Jeff Wilson Jr., Sermon, Gallman, whatever order you want. We don't know with Sermon yet. I think he'll be really good on the Niners because of how explosive he is. Gallman and Jeff Wilson Jr., I think, are both solid backs who've proven they're pretty good. But end of day, like, there's no one there that can just take over a game completely in my mind. Like, Chris Carson has shown that ability, like, for multiple weeks to just dominate any team, and be a top 10 running back at points in his career, where none of these guys on the Niners have shown that ability. And they also are running behind a way better scheme. So before you bring up yards per carry, whatever running backs on the Niners is going to have an insanely good yards per carry. That's the fact of the matter. High-end talent, I'd say Seahawks are better.
I mean, let's be honest. A lot of people bring up Raheem Mostert, right? Yeah, Raheem Mostert has had 2 or 3 phenomenal games in his career. Obviously, the NFC Championship is one of the all-time great performances by a running back. Raheem Mostert has 1 regular season 100-yard game in his career. Think about that. 1 regular season 100-yard game in his career. He's very explosive. He might be the fastest player in the NFL. He's a home run hitter. He's an incredible football player. But at the same time, Raheem Mostert has been massively overrated by Niners fans. If the Niners believe that Raheem Mostert was their bell cow and he would take them to the Super Bowl the way Terrell Davis took Mike Shanahan's teams to the Super Bowl, even with John Elway, you don't trade up to go draft Trey Sermon. Yeah. So, like, I understand when people say, oh, Raheem Mostert dominated because he had the excellent Ravens game and he was incredible versus the Packers. But the Niners' run game on the whole dominates. Like, Tevin Coleman, who a lot of people hate, did have that incredible divisional game versus the Vikings. So I think everything you said was fair. And Caleb Austin actually brings up the reason I was having the Niners at 2. And this is why I have the Niners above the Seahawks. And I have them just below the Rams only because I like a couple guys on the Rams. Maybe I'm crazy for liking those guys, but I think Kyle Juszczyk is kind of the trump card. I think he's so versatile and he's so good at what he does, and he's technically part of this running back core, where I think that's what really gives them the advantage over Seattle. I just wanted to touch on it running backs, but that was really what I wanted to say when we got to here to the Niners and why I have them at 2. And, Raheem Mostert's obviously explosive and a home run hitter when he's on the field. Trey Sermon looks the part. He looks like he's going to be something, especially he was very good at Ohio State. And I thought he was good at Oklahoma too, to be honest. I like Wayne Gallman. You like Wayne Gallman. I just think that, overall that they have this entire running back core with depth. And when you throw in Kyle Juszczyk, who to me is the standout player of this group, he's actually the best player by far of this group. Then I think their running back core is just a little bit better than Seattle's, just overall on the whole.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention him, and he's actually an insanely good pass catcher too, which out of the backfield, like, you wouldn't really, I guess it's technically not part of the run game, but it's part of the play action game, and that's predicated off the running. So, and he's insanely good at pass catching and a really good blocker too, and that's honestly a great throw in there. So, I'm happy you mentioned him because Kyle Juszczyk is a really, really good fullback. But yeah, so is it mine for number 2 or yours for number 2?
Yours for number 2. I think you have Seattle.
Yeah, so I had Seattle. And like we've mentioned, like, you could flip-flop the Seahawks or the Niners, but my main reason for going Seahawks was because of Chris Carson, as well as I think Rashad Penny's honestly a really underrated running back. Yes, he's not worth a first-round pick for the production he's put up. Yes, he did get injured last year and not really play. I don't even think he played at all or played very limited amount. But when he has played, he's been a really, really good number 2, and I would say replaced most of, if not all of, the production of Chris Carson. But to go on more on Chris Carson, like, obviously his style of football is the main reason he gets injured. He just tries to run over everyone that's in his way, but he is the best running back out of these 2 teams by, I think, a pretty fairly wide margin, in the sense that he has proven over time he can get 100-yard games. He can catch passes. And he's just an absolute menace with the ball in his hands. And then Penny's pretty good running the ball as well. So those two are the main reason. Now, if you were basing it more off just a whole and you knew these guys were probably going to get injured, yeah, of course, I'd rather have Gallman or Jeff Wilson Jr. over, say, Travis Homer or DJ Dallas. But I love Carson and Penny as a 1-2 punch, and I think it's really, really good. And the Seahawks run game has been solid over the years, and maybe it's because of the just sheer volume of carries these guys get. And then they do have a tight end too, Nick Bellore, or sorry, not tight end, fullback, who's pretty solid as well. So I have the Seahawks at 2, but you could argue Niners, and I couldn't disagree too much.
Yeah, and I think going with number 1, it's going to be a little shocking, but I'm just so high on this team's number 1 running back. I think he's going to be a top 6 or 7 back in the NFL, and that's why I'm going to have the Rams. And I think the rankings have come out where you have the Rams too. Mm-hmm. I'm a very big Cam Akers fan. I thought Cam Akers showed a lot as a rookie, and I think him and Darrell Henderson are a very, very underrated 1-2 duo. Like, I think Darrell Henderson, most people think of him as a bust because when they drafted him out of Memphis, people thought he was going to replace Todd Gurley, and now it looks like he's going to be the kind of the backup to Cam Akers. But he also had a 625 yards rushing last year. I think Darrell Henderson's actually a really good back. I like him a lot, and I really love Cam Akers. I think Cam Akers was the second-best rookie back in the NFL. Thought he was better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I thought maybe Gibson, James Robinson, but I actually preferred Akers. Yeah. Behind Jonathan Taylor, to me, he was the second-best back. I think he's a perfect fit for the Rams' run game, and I think they're going to run the ball effectively next year. I think they're going to have, especially with Matthew Stafford stretching the field. Like, I mean, Jared Goff, the fact that they kept running bootlegs and having him throw 5-6 yards in front of him, I think it was a problem because it restricted how they were defended. I think McVay is going to really be able to push the football down the field with Matthew Stafford and Tutu Atwell and Deshaun Jackson and Robert Woods and all of that, and that's going to really help their run game. I am very high on Cam Akers, and that's why I have them 1. Now, I might be wrong about this a year from now, but I'm a big Cam Akers fan, and so to me, they have the best running back core when you add him and Henderson together in the entire NFC West.
Yeah, so I had Cam Akers there too, and I'm happy you mentioned Henderson because he's actually I think he's a pretty solid back that people don't talk about, and he did a serviceable job early this year. But I know a lot of people would mention the Rams' running game isn't as good as the Niners. We're basing it just off the running backs, not as the offensive running game as a whole, because that would factor in the O-line. And if you were to sit here and tell me that you think the Rams O-line is better than the Niners, I would say no chance. I wouldn't say McVay's maybe as good of a run schemer as Shanahan. That would be a fair argument as well, although I think McVay is a really good run game schemer. So I think the main reason with Akers is the fact that he kind of didn't pop off till the end of the season, but when he got his chances, when he got his moments, I think he'll be a top 10 running back this year. And it may be a bold take, but the way he was running last year was just honestly incredible. And having him and Henderson with hopefully a much improved passing game, that'll open up even more for him. So Cam Akers, I think, is probably the best running back overall in the NFC West, and that's why I have him there. But we have to see more out of him because he did only have 600 yards, but just the way he got them was probably the most impressive, I think.
Yeah, and what you said has to be discussed, right? This is about the running backs. This isn't about the run game. If you put Cam Akers on the 49ers, Cam Akers might have had 1,000 yards last year. Shanahan's the best run game schemer in the NFL. McVay's a good run game coordinator, but he's not on Shanahan's level. And so, that needs to be taken into account. There's a reason Raheem Mostert has been on 5 different teams. And now he has this incredible story. He has this incredible career arc, and he's obviously an amazing person and all of that. But this scheme really saves running backs' careers. I mean, let's go through the guys that Mike Shanahan had success with: Tatum Bell, Olandis Gary, Clinton Portis, Terrell Davis. You can go down 6 names that he had 1,000 yards rushing with. That tells you something where you do have to take into account what's the player is actually capable of doing and what's the scheme doing for the player. And I'm with you. I think Chris Carson's phenomenal, and I still think Cam Akers will be the best running back in this division by far by the end of next year. Again, it's a projection. It could be wrong, but I'm very high on Cam Akers as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at what he did against just even a couple of the games that he played in, like against the Packers, 18 rushes for 90 yards. Against the Seahawks, 28 for 131. Against the Patriots, he had 29 rushes for 171 yards. And there's more games too where he's just dominating, but he didn't really get a chance to be like the feature guy until closer to the end of the year. And honestly, Vish, I would predict that he will be the feature guy. And with McVay, we saw what he did with Todd Gurley. He kind of ran him into the ground, but for a few years, Todd Gurley was in the MVP conversation. I want to say it was 2016, where maybe 17. But nonetheless, like Todd Gurley was legitimately the best running back in the league. And I think he'll be I think Cam Akers can kind of be the feature back for this team. And I'm excited to see what they can do with Stafford at the helm now. And then they still, hopefully their O-line can hold up. They still have Whitworth, who seems like he might play another 30 years just because of how old he actually is. But yeah, Akers is going to be exciting for the Rams.
I agree with you, but I think that he's going to be really, really good next year. I mean, I thought he looked great down the stretch. I really did.